This is Retiring Today, the podcast that guides you to and through retirement. I'm Molly Nelson, host of the podcast, here with Loren Merkle. He's a certified financial planner, a certified financial fiduciary, and a retirement income certified professional. And we've got Jack Henry with us. He is the producer of our podcast. A new phase of life requires a new perspective. Today, we want to talk about why you have to rethink taxes as you get into retirement. Not unlike times in our life when we've had a mindset shift. Jack, you have a new endeavor that's been a real big mindset shift for you.
Yes, the biggest mindset shift I've had to come through since graduating college a mere 4 or 5 months ago, which was, there was a calm Saturday morning where me and my fiance decided to go to the local rescue dog facility, and we found a sweet little puppy and decided, you know what? Our life is boring. Might as well just mess it up a little bit anyway. And what comes with a puppy is similar to a child where sleep is an issue. Where whether it's waking up in the middle of the night multiple times or just the one time, it'll throw a wrench in your sleep schedule. And my mindset shifted for sleep because all of a sudden I couldn't sleep for 9 hours a day, any time of the day. There's no more naps. There's no more, I had to just plan out all my sleep.
It is a mindset shift, and one many people can relate to. Kind of reminds you of Loren, that whole newborn baby thing. You remember that too?
Yeah, I do remember that like it was yesterday, except for it was 11 years ago.
Almost 12. She's going to be 12 before you know it.
12 in March, but I do remember the sleep schedule is definitely a lot different because it's no longer on your schedule.
Yep.
It's on their schedule.
It is a mindset shift, and a new puppy, a new baby, a big change in life. Many times we have to think about things differently, and retirement is no different. Loren, you get to sit down with people nearly every day and talk to them about this mindset shift and what's going to come. And they still, even though you talk to them, of course, it's the first time that they've had to do a lot of these things.
Yeah, and when you do something for the first time, there's just a lot of things that you don't know. And when it comes to retirement and making that transition from working to retirement, there's just a lot you don't know that you don't know. And so it's very much a discovery process as you go through this transition. And when you're thinking about retiring in the working world, right? When you're working, you're 40 years old, you're thinking about retiring, you're thinking about all the good things, right? You're thinking about having this freedom of time, and you're thinking about it probably more from a 40-year-old perspective of all the things you wish you could do right now, but you just don't have time or maybe even the money to do them. But when you're retired, you're envisioning a world where now you have all kinds of time and you have more money than what you've ever had. So you're going to be able to do all of these things. That's where your mind is at until you get maybe a couple years away from retiring. Things start to get really, really serious because now you're forced to think about all these details that come with retiring that you've never had to think about, like where's the money going to come from? As long as you're working, you have a paycheck coming in, that's going to fuel your lifestyle. But when you're retired, you need to have that income coming in, maybe even more income coming in. But that's also something you have to figure out is how much do you really need to fuel the lifestyle that you've been dreaming about for all these years. And then, of course, when that income comes in, how much is it going to be taxed? And that's going to determine how much you actually get to spend, because you have $10,000 coming in, but $2,000 of that goes to Uncle Sam or to the IRS, then that means you only get to spend $8,000. So there's all these different things you have to think about when it comes to retirement, and you don't tend to think about them until you're forced to.
It's like going to the Animal Rescue League and looking at that cute little puppy and looking at your fiance and saying, oh, this will be a great bonding experience for us. Won't it, honey? And then there's
wrong.
so many
wrong.
more things that happen.
But that's so accurate, though, because you and Charlotte were probably thinking about all the nice walks in the park you're going to have
it'll
together.
get us outside.
And you were dreaming about throwing the ball and the puppy going to get it, right? You never once probably really considered that at 2 a.m. in the morning, the puppy might decide it wants to go to the bathroom, and then
exactly.
You have to get up and let it happen.
Or, we consider that and go, oh, yeah, that's just a part of the puppy phase. But then actually when you have to go through and live it, you're woefully unprepared.
So this is part of a series, Rethink Retirement. So today we want to focus on taxes. But before we can rethink taxes, we've got to get into the current mindset. So the current mindset of most people when it comes to taxes, Loren, is what?
The current mindset is that you know you have to pay taxes because you make income, and you want to do the least amount possible when it comes to paying that tax bill, which is what I mean by that is if you're using a tax preparer or a CPA, when it rolls around to about February, you collect your documents that you have to send to your CPA, and then you don't want to think about it ever again.
And then you cross your fingers that they don't tell you owe a ton.
That's right. And you just don't want to think about it. Maybe you get a return. Maybe you get some money back. Maybe you have to pay a little bit more. But you're paying that CPA for the ease of you not having to worry about it. When it comes to retirement planning, now it shifts completely. Because now you actually have a lot more control over the tax bill that you pay. And if you take that same approach, meaning that if you don't embrace the mindset shift, then you're just going to pay the tax bill every single year like it was when you were working. You're not going to implement strategies to decrease that tax bill. And if you add up what your tax bill is going to be over a 20-year projected retirement, it could be six figures, mid six figures, and for some people, even high six figures, depending upon the type of money that you've saved for retirement. So it's not something that you want to overlook, because in retirement, you have more control than when you do when you're working. When you're working, if you want to decrease your tax bill, then maybe you can contribute more to your employer plan. Maybe you can do a tax-deductible contribution to an IRA. Maybe you can make a charitable contribution. There's just not a whole lot you can do. But in retirement, there's a lot more tax saving levers you can pull. You just have to know what those are and implement them effectively.
And I think the more you know about what's coming, the more prepared you can be. So let's talk about how the mindset needs to shift. You kind of alluded to this, but let's kind of break it down into 3 mindset shifts as you rethink taxes as you head to retirement. So mindset shift number 1, think long term. It's no longer just every April when there's a filing deadline.
Yeah, that's what we call tax preparation. There's a very big difference between tax preparation, which is when March or April roll around, you supply the documents to your CPA, and then it gets filed. You're basically recording your tax history when you file your taxes. You are telling the IRS, here's what happened to you from a tax perspective for the prior year. And that's really about all that's taken place. When we are talking about tax planning, now it's way different, because now with tax planning, yes, preparation is a part of that, and that happens once a year. But the tax planning takes place all year around. And most of the most effective tax planning strategies you have to implement during calendar year. So you can't wait until you file your taxes to implement these types of strategies. You have to do it during that current year. And in order to really effectively implement tax planning, you have to know what those strategies are and then implement them prior to that 12/31 deadline.
And people might be thinking, but Loren, taxes are taxes. Whether it's while I'm working or in retirement, I'm going to take some money out of some accounts and it's going to be taxed. But when you really dive into this, not all retirement income is taxed the same. And maybe you don't have to fully understand that. You probably want to work with a professional, but if at least you understand on the surface level that all the taxes aren't the same, that can help you understand that retirement shift, that mindset shift as you head into retirement.
Yes, and that's one of the most effective strategies that you can implement really from a broad perspective is create tax diversification. When we talk about diversification, when most people go immediately to their investments, right? You want some small caps, mid caps, large caps, you want some bonds, maybe you want some money. You're thinking about your asset diversification as opposed to your tax diversification. But if you can create some really nice tax diversification in your portfolio, then when it comes time to retire and you need to take income from your portfolio, then you can choose. You want to take X amount of income from this tax bucket, you want to take X amount of income from this tax bucket, and then what you can do is control your spendable income by really taking control over what your tax bill is. But that tax diversification is the hardest part to create, because most of your career, you've had the pre-tax 401k, 403b, TSP, the tax-deductible IRAs. That's what you've had available to you to contribute to. And it really wasn't until 1998 that the Roth IRA became available. And then it really wasn't until 2005-ish, somewhere around there, that the Roth 401k plan became available. So you haven't had all these years, all these decades to be able to accumulate money in a tax-free account. So most retirees today And most people on the doorsteps of retirement predominantly have their retirement savings all in one tax bucket. When you take that money out, you will pay taxes at your ordinary income tax bracket. And that's what we have to try to figure out from as far as decreasing your overall retirement tax bill. That's where we have to start.
You may be wondering, where do I start? Maybe you don't understand exactly what taxes are going to look like for you in retirement. That's okay. Most people don't know because you haven't had to pay taxes in retirement before. But I know who can help you out. It's a retirement planner. You can talk directly with a retirement planner by going to merkleretire.com. That's MERKLE retire.com. You can ask questions about taxes, or you can just talk about what's on your mind. It's pretty easy to schedule this call. You're going to go to that website, and the link is in our show notes, and there's a calendar there. So you can choose a time and a date that works for you. As far as what you talk about during the call, that's really up to you, Loren. As far as the agenda on the call, some people very, very specific about what they want to talk about. Other people have more broad questions.
Yeah, sometimes you just don't know what questions to ask because you've never really been here before. Some people come with a list of questions. Some people just want to talk about what they should be thinking about. It doesn't matter. That time's for you to discover what it is that you need to be thinking about to retire the way that you want to retire.
You alluded to this next mindset shift, and I've dubbed it this. Tell me if you like my title, though. I'm okay with it if you don't. But what I've said is, for this mindset shift, you may have to pay now to save later. And this leads to that Roth conversation.
Yeah, pay now versus later. This is a hard concept to grasp. And even a lot of CPAs, we'll have conversations with a lot of families and individuals that we work with their CPAs, because they also sometimes don't really grasp the benefit of pay now versus pay later. All that simply means is you are being intentional. That's what we break that down to. You are deciding that you're going to pay taxes on this piece of your portfolio as opposed to later down the road. Now, the only reason you decide that is because you came to the conclusion that it would be less expensive to pay taxes on a piece of this money now as a piece of that as opposed to paying it on that money later. And the only way you can determine that is to put together that tax plan and identify if you pay taxes at your ordinary income tax rates now versus waiting, deferring, and allowing that bucket to grow and then paying taxes on that money later plus the growth, that it would be less expensive now as opposed to later. That's the Roth conversion. So you take money out of your pre-tax IRA, your pre-tax 401k plan, you're choosing to pay taxes on it in the year that you take it out, and you shift it then to your Roth IRA. Once it's in the Roth IRA, then you never have to pay taxes on that money or the growth again. And by paying taxes now with tax rates at historical lows, many of the families and individuals we work with, we have been able to identify it can save them a bundle, even if tax rates stay the same, but it could really save them a bundle if tax rates increase down the road.
And are you typically doing this with some percentage of their retirement savings, all of their retirement savings? What does it look like?
Well, this is where you have to be really intentional, because if you have $1 million in a pre-tax 401k plan, you're not going to want to convert all of that $1 million in 1 year. So you might convert 50,000. It may make sense to convert 20,000. It's going to be dependent upon what you think you can pay now versus what you think you'd have to pay down the road. One of the tax strategies that we like to use is what we call fill up your tax bracket. So what that means, let's say you're in the 12% federal tax bracket and you have another $30,000 of taxable income that you can experience and still stay in that 12% bracket. Well, that means that you could potentially convert over $30,000, pay 12%, and then not have to pay taxes on that money or the growth ever again. If you converted more than $30,000, then the excess over that 30, you would pay 22%. So as opposed to paying 22%, then stay in that 12%, which is a much better deal than the 22, and assuming that the 22 is not going to be a good deal for you down the road.
So when you do a Roth conversion, how does paying the taxes work?
When you do the Roth conversion, you have a couple different options of when you pay the taxes. You can pay the taxes now, or you can pay the taxes later. If you pay the taxes now, you withhold it from the conversion. So as an example, with the $30,000 conversion, if you owe 12% federal tax, then you can take the $3,400, $3,500 and send that to the IRS right away which means that the balance is actually going over to the Roth IRA. Or you can send the full $30,000 to the Roth IRA, and then you can pay that tax a couple different ways. You can pay estimated taxes if you do so, or when you file your taxes in the spring, then you can make it up when you file the taxes. The one thing to be cognizant of, though, is the IRS wants to get paid in a timely manner.
Well, that IRS.
So if you wait until the spring, then they could assess you an interest penalty on the taxes that you should have paid earlier. So it's something you want to be careful with. The withholding method is a very easy method, and I would say most people do choose to withhold.
Mindset shift number 3, you have more control than you think.
About the taxes that you pay. That's what you're talking about, Molly,
I think we'll stay on taxes, yeah.
On the taxes, yeah. You do have more control than what you think. Let's just take Social Security as an example. Many people don't realize that Social Security is taxed at the federal level. And in some states, actually, it's taxed as well. There's 11 states where Social Security is taxed. Starting next year, that's going to go down to 9, though. So we're going in the right direction. Missouri and Nebraska have decided, they have declared that for the year 2024, they're not going to tax Social Security.
Okay, our neighbors, the Missouri and Nebraska, are probably happy about
the
that.
Midwest is getting it together. But as far as the IRS is concerned, the feds still may tax you, and that's all dependent upon your filing status, whether you file single or married, and then also what your, it's called provisional.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm always talking about my provisional income.
Yes, so it's based on your provisional income, not your gross income. So just a quick way to calculate what your provisional income, and this is pretty quick. Take your adjusted gross income, which is basically most of the income that you have.
Okay.
Add back in your tax-free interest, and the most common type of tax-free interest would be from municipal bonds.
Okay.
So if you have any municipal bond interest, add that back into your adjusted gross income.
Okay.
Take your Social Security payments for the year, divide that by 2, and then add those two numbers together.
This is why we have CPAs, by the way, because they do all this.
So if your adjusted gross income is $40,000 for the year, you have $2,000 of municipal bond interest. Now we're at $42,000. You have $24,000 of Social Security income. Add the 12 to the 42.
Okay.
So now you're at $54,000 from a provisional income standpoint. And that provisional income number means absolutely nothing except for it determines what level of tax you are going to pay on your Social Security.
And you pay it's a percentage based, right? You can pay taxes on up to 85 of it. Is that right? 85%?
Yeah, the way that works is you're going to pay basically between 0 and 85% of your Social Security income can be subject to federal tax. And then if you file a single and your provisional income is above $34,000, you'll pay up to 85%, $44,000 if you're married, up to 85%, and then anywhere in between would be up to 50%. So there's different levels of tax that you can pay on your Social Security income, but it all boils down to what your provisional income is. And what impacts what your provisional income is more than anything else is the income that you're taking from pension income, and then your IRA, your pre-tax IRA, and your pre-tax 401k plan. So this is where you have more control than what you think. Is if you can create tax diversification, not all of your retirement income investments are underneath the pre-tax accounts. When you're actually taking income, it is possible that you can go from paying up to 85% federal tax on your Social Security income to maybe only up to 50% federal tax. Or for some of you, it would be possible to get down to pay absolutely nothing on your Social Security income from a federal tax standpoint.
Yeah, and I'm sure most people, of course, would like to raise their hand and say, yes, I'd like to pay
Sign me up for 0.
Sign me up for that 0, but this takes planning, right? So I suspect that you sit down with people and look at all their income sources, look at how they're taxed, and then if we do it in this order or from these buckets, here's your tax picture. If we do it from these buckets in this order, here's your tax picture. It's a lot more complicated than that, but did I boil it down a little there?
Kind of. I mean, step one is you want to make sure that you create as much tax diversification as least expensively as you possibly can. And then step 2 is how do you take the money out of those different buckets that you've created the tax diversification to fuel the income that you need and then also decrease your overall retirement tax bill as much as you can.
Yeah, because here's what I do know. You can't create tax diversification if all your money is in one kind of retirement savings, especially the kind that's going to get taxed at ordinary income.
Not when it comes time to take an income in retirement, but most people who are on the doorsteps of retirement, they do. That's what their portfolio looks like. They have most of their income or the income sources in the pre-tax accounts. So now it's a matter of how do you systematically, intentionally get that money converted over where you can pay the least amount possible, not only for that particular year, if possible, but also when we consider the next 20 years of your retirement time frame. And then the other thing is to consider is your legacy ambitions, because if you still have all of that money pre-tax when you pass away, now that money is going to go on to your kids, and your kids are probably in their highest wage earning years, which means you dump all this pre-tax money onto them. And now because of the Secure Act 2.0, they have only 10 years. I'm sorry, Secure Act 1.0. They only have 10 years to take that money out. And when they take it out, it's going to be piled onto their ordinary income. And that could cost them even more than what it was going to cost you if you were just going to systematically take it out over the course of your retirement. So there's a lot of things to consider, not only while you're alive, but what are your legacy ambitions? What could that potentially look like? And then that will lead you to a lot of different decisions that you can make, which going through that decision process feels really good because you get to see the information really clearly on what if. What if you just continue down the path you're going? Or what if you do make some changes, some decisions, and then you can see how that's really going to impact you short-term and long-term, and it makes all of these decisions a lot easier.
So if someone listening is, 5 or 10 years out from retirement, should they be thinking about this right now? Are there things they can do right now? Or is this more of a 2 to 3 years from retirement kind of thing?
The longer the time horizon you have the plan, the better off potentially it can be for you. So if you're 5 years out, 10 years out, now's a great time to get started looking at what some of these options are for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to start doing Roth conversions or implementing some of these tax strategies, but having a plan is powerful, and you know whether or not there is a strategy or multiple strategies that you can implement this year, or you need to wait till next year or 5 years, or even when you retire. If you're on the other side and you're retired, maybe you've been retired 5 years, it doesn't necessarily mean that your time has passed. There's a lot of strategies you can implement even when you're retired to help decrease what your retirement tax bill is going to be going forward as well. So I would say wherever you are in your retirement process, 5 to 10 years out or 5 to 10 years in, you need to look at it to make sure you're taking advantage of all the opportunities present to you.
You can put yourself in a better position to retire. A great way to start is talking to a retirement planner about taxes or any of the other aspects of retirement that are on your mind. You can schedule a 15-minute retirement checkup call right now by going to merkleretire.com. There you'll find a calendar. You can choose a date and a time that works for you, and you can start a conversation. You don't have to have an agenda. If you do, that's great. If not, our retirement planners are really good about kind of giving you information and starting the conversation if you're not exactly sure where you want to go with your 15-minute retirement checkup call. It's been a mindset shift. Do our minds feel shifted? Has your mind shifted about your puppy? Are you now understanding? Because I just want to let you know, I'm not sure if kids are next for you. I've heard you mention children before, so I think that is part of your long-term plan. But I want to just tell you that this little puppy mindset shift, it's a good warm-up for that child mindset shift, if that's where you're headed.
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, because life, it's not going to get easier anytime soon, so I just kind of got a head start on making it a little harder for myself.
Good, but you see the joy.
Yes.
Just like that mindset shift of retirement, just like the puppy, just like your daughter who's about to be 12, there are the hard times, but man, at the end of the day, these are the real joys of life.
And these are the times that we're going to think back on and be like, do you remember when we had to get up 3 times for that darn puppy?
Of course.
But aren't we happy we went through that? I remember thinking it wasn't so much fun to get up during the middle of the night many times for my daughter.
Okay.
But
I
could tell you, I have enjoyed every single phase of that, and each phase a little bit more than the last.
Yeah, Jace is you've got a great daughter, and it's been fun watching her grow up, and it's been fun talking about her and all of those aspects of life and those milestones, including retirement. On this podcast, it's Retirement Today. Thanks for listening. Merkle Retirement Planning is an independent financial services firm helping individuals create retirement strategies using a variety of investments and insurance products to custom suit their goals and objectives. Any information discussed in these shows is for educational purposes only and should not be construed as investment, tax, or legal advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Elite Retirement Planning LLC. Insurance services are offered through MRP Insurance LLC.